The San Antonio Spurs is San Antonio.
I love them.
Yeah.
Win or lose, I love them.
That's what I told them. I told them that's how they feel about
That's
them.
right.
Matt, would you take Wiseman over Aldridge right now?
Yes, absolutely. Like that's not even a question. I mean, Aldridge we saw in the bubble is it seems like he might not be a good fit with our young core, and Wiseman fits in well, at least on the surface because just the age and the potential. But I don't know. I just after seeing this bubble Spurs, I don't want to see Lamarcus really be featured too much with our young stars up and coming.
See, I wouldn't trade Lamarcus right now. I know I'm in the minority. I've been looking at Spurs Twitter, and everyone just wants a trade right now. I think the Spurs bubble could be the bubble Spurs could be a better iteration of the Spurs if Lamarcus is in there instead of Jakob. Now, that's if Lamarcus buys in. So I wouldn't want to take a risk moving up this draft. I would want to keep our 11th pick. But anyway, there's a lot of good options in the draft this year. A couple of guys that Spurs fans would love to reach for, love to trade up for. In my opinion, none of these guys are really going to guarantee. Let me rephrase that. These guys aren't guaranteed to move the needle this year. Last year, the top few picks were stacked. I mean, we don't have a Ja Morant. We don't have a Zion in this draft. There's no surefire thing in this draft, but there's a lot of potential in it. It's a flat draft, as I've been calling it. Right now, we're not. It doesn't look like there's going to be a pre-draft trade. We sit one night before the draft. But Matt, so would you rather move up right now or just stand pat? Because we have options with the assets we have right now.
Yeah, I'd rather move up if we can, get into the top 6 so we can get a Denny, a Obi Toppin, somebody like that. I do think that's kind of a sure thing. You said not this next year. Maybe not this next year, but I think it would be a lot faster than, getting Devin Vassell or something like that at 11. You might have to wait like 3 years before he's a good contributor. So, yeah, I'd be looking to do that. It looks like we just signed Demar, or he opted in to his last year of his contract. So it looks like he's definitely staying, which, I'm happy with because we saw Demar kind of adapt the way he played and led the offense in the bubble. So, that kind of just leaves Lamarcus there as like the elephant in the room. Are we going to keep him or trade him? So, yeah, I would definitely look to move Lamarcus and try to get up into that top 6 range and maybe get a good wing or maybe a good center like, James Wiseman or the one from USC. I forget what his name is. I forget how to pronounce it. But, yeah, I definitely – if I was calling the shots, I would look to move up. I don't think Lamarcus offers us that much right now, and I think we should try to be turning the page as fast as possible.
Yeah, you might be right. And a lot of people are thinking that. I'm going to reiterate this, and we can cut wherever, but I think that there's a lot of potential with the current iteration of the Spurs. So you got the young core right now. And this is the argument for not moving up in the draft. I'll keep going at that. We have a young core right now that is 2 years removed from almost dethroning the second-seeded Denver Nuggets team. That was a crazy series in which Derek White had a breakout series. Bryn Forbes played well. Don't want to see that keep happening, to be honest. I don't want Bryn Forbes back. But DeMar and Lamarcus were the centerpieces of that team. And the team was pretty good. And that was 2 years ago with this same young core. Now, the regular season last year, not including the bubble, was a bit rough. Had an 8-game losing streak in there. Do Spurs fans ever experience 8-game losing streaks? No, not with the history that we've been fortunate to have. So it was a down year. I'm not trying to dispute that, but I'd argue that it was a year where the team was kind of finding its identity with all these new young guys emerging. DeJounte Murray coming back into the mix after that ACL. That was there was an adjustment period there. I think we saw starting Derek and DeJounte shuffling the starting spot throughout the first couple of months of the season, if I'm not mistaken. I think Derek became a starter for a while, and then DeJounte won it back, or even if you want to use the word win, I don't know if that's even the right word. I think they were just trying different looks. And in the bubble, they had a little bit of a breakthrough because Lamarcus wasn't there. And I'm not trying to suggest that Lamarcus was the reason it's all bad, but hear me out. Not having Lamarcus there forced the Spurs to play a different style of basketball. And we started to see a little bit towards the end of the year when Lamarcus was taking more threes. That's the running gun style. You got these young guys. You got Demar, who's a great distributor, who has a guard type of package, as far as scoring and the way he scores, besides shooting, that is, the three-point ball. But it was a run and gun thing, a move the ball kind of thing. In the clutch, you're going to go to Demar, let him close the game out. I was kind of worried before he opted in, not that he's absolutely staying. I was kind of worried about who the closer would be. But we adopted this new style where everyone kind of, the ball moved. The young guys played. Keldon Johnson obviously broke out. We all saw that. We're all excited to see him play this year. So my argument is that this young core is not necessarily so young. They're not necessarily infants anymore. And they're going to greatly complement what Demar and Lamarcus already have been bringing to the table these last 2 years. In addition to that, Demar's on his third year in the system. And the second year with the consistent starting lineup, well, I say consistent, you don't count the bubble. That's probably more indicative of what it's going to be moving forward. But I guess the more consistent host of players with DeJounte re-entering the mix that we would consider our core. And I just think that if you keep Lamarcus and you keep DeMar, and then all these other young guys get better, and then you throw Keldon Johnson into the mix, and then, hey, maybe Luka makes it into the mix, and then our 11th pick, whoever it might be, Vassell, or what if someone slips? What if, I mean, it's unlikely, but what if someone slips and we get someone a little bit higher on the board? Or, I mean, that's all possible. And like I said originally, this draft isn't necessarily flush with talent. I mean, it has some names, but it's not what we've seen before. This is the COVID draft. I mean, it is what it is. There was no March Madness, less team workouts. We haven't seen these players as much as we've seen them before. When I say it's flat, I guess I don't mean it's not talented. I mean, we don't really know who the surefire standouts were. So my suggestion is you let this team stay together while all these other teams are breaking up and reforming. You let this team keep building chemistry, and you don't move Lamarcus to move up in the draft. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know why you're so, in love with Lamarcus Aldridge, because you're acting like he's some, like we can't live without him. We're better off with him than any other young upcoming prospect. He's 35 years old. He's like close to retirement age at this point. And he's been a good average to good defender. I think I kind of like him as a rim protector. That's about it. But offensively, you said that he'll be there to help out the young guys. I'm not sure how much he'll help out the young guys. I mean, we saw him like kind of hamper them throughout the season. Just his style of being an ISO post player, mid range, 3-pointers now. So yeah, I don't know what you mean with Lamarcus. I think we can, find someone at least as good defensively as a rim protector in the draft. If we traded up for like a James Wiseman, I know he's not the greatest defensive player, but the potential is there. But offensively, I just think you don't need Lamarcus there with the young guys. I think Derek, DeMar, and Keldon, you're seeing Keldon break out now. I think right there is enough firepower offensively, to you be the people to lean on to score and create. And I think just, keeping Lamarcus here, keeping him in the starting lineup will just keep on, slowing down the progress they're making as a unit and and their developments in their careers. So, I mean, it's pretty clear like where I stand and where you stand, and I'm pretty sure I'm right. But you know how Pop is and the Spurs are. They'll probably, just stick with Lamarcus, value the experience, the veteran, and I'm sure they'll try to, reform the way he plays and adjust, because we saw in the bubble the best way for the Spurs to play right now with our current guys up and coming. So I do think Lamarcus can adjust a little bit, but I just don't know how valuable he is just like in that role, because he's just his whole thing has been ISO fadeaways, the 3-pointers mid range. So I mean, maybe it can work, but I just don't see it. I think there's better options out there, and he's not getting any younger.
That's definitely true. If anything, if I were to give anywhere on my argument towards your stance, he's not getting any younger. He's 35. That's an aging player. But look at Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez was a similar play style to prime Lamarcus. When I say prime Lamarcus, I mean the Lamarcus that backs people down, shoots fadeaways all day, does hooks, does his moves in the post. Brook Lopez is one of the best, space the floor and protect the rim big men in the league now. He's recarved his role in this league, and he has an incredibly important role with Milwaukee now. Lamarcus, I would argue, was better than Brook Lopez, and I could see him following a similar trajectory, especially seeing the way Lamarcus was adjusting his game in the second half of last year. Obviously, didn't play in the bubble, but before that, he was shooting more threes, spacing the floor. We were running it through Demar, and he was getting his touches around the three-point line, and we were seeing a lot more success. The offense could breathe. We were getting a lot out of that. Now, you couple that with the young rotation that we saw in the bubble. You plug Lamarcus into that Jakob role. Lamarcus not only protects the rim like Jakob, I'd argue just as good, maybe not by tools, but by experience and savvy. I'd argue Lamarcus is as good of a rim protector / interior defender as Jakob is, despite Jakob's obvious tools and length and quickness for his size. I'd argue Lamarcus can do just as well on that front as Jak. And you know what that'll give the Spurs? That'll give the Spurs young guys more opportunities, more clean looks, if you will, more flow in that offense. If you got a guy that's not only protecting the rim, spacing the floor on offense. Oh, and Lamarcus gets offensive boards. Oh, and Lamarcus can actually dunk the ball. Jakob can dunk. He just chooses not to. I love Jakob. I would love Jakob to come off the bench for Lamarcus. I just see so much potential. Like let's say hypothetically, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, you do the bubble Spurs starting lineup. DeJounte, Derek, Lonnie, Demar, and instead of Jak, you do Lamarcus. And let's just say Lamarcus buys in completely. Let's just say ideal scenario here. And he's spacing the floor. They're running and gunning. The young guys have the ball in their hands because we're spreading the ball out. We're doing bubble Spurs play style with DeMar and Lamarcus. Imagine the potential there. And then think about this. You have Keldon Johnson either starting in that Lonnie spot. It depends on which direction the Spurs want to go with it. I could see him starting in that spot and having Lonnie come off the bench. I could also see even moving DeJounte to the bench and having Derek start at the 1, get the White Walker connection going. And then you get Keldon in there at the 3. I mean, I just think it's so potentially lethal. I think that team could win a playoff series. I mean, I wouldn't say it's going to contend. I mean, I'm a homer, but I'm not that big of a homer. But it could win a series if we saw this team, less all that experience, less Keldon Johnson, less Luka, who still a project, who knows, haven't seen much, but I just have to imagine that could be so lethal. You still got Rudy off the bench. You still got Patty. I mean, we think we're keeping them. I haven't heard much about that since the initial Patty rumor. We got Lonnie or Keldon off the bench. Trey Lyles, who the Spurs are so high on, off the bench. And Trey's even said that he wants to be a career Spur. I just think that there's so much potential with the team as is. Oh, and you throw the 11th pick in this draft in there. And I think as likely as you are to find a bust in the top 10 in this draft, you're just as likely to find a gem in the bottom 20, just because we don't know enough about this draft. We don't know as much as we should, as we normally would. That's my take on it. I just don't think moving up really suits the young guys. I mean, we have a young core. Derek is 26. DeJounte is 24. Lonnie and Keldon are young. Luka's young. But a lot of the young core is moving up. I mean, Derek's the best of the young core. And he's already 26. He ain't that young. We have the players to make some noise. If we keep building in the draft correctly year after year, this team could just naturally develop forward. This team could just naturally, smoothly run forward. We re-signed DeMar, get him in there, have him mentor these young guys. He loves playing with the young guys. He said Keldon was his favorite rookie. And if Lamarcus buys in, Lamarcus has to change his game. He has to play like that floor spacing Brook Lopez type of role. He could be so good at that. Imagine him just pulling up for three, spacing the floor, pulling the big out. I mean, I could just see so much there. But let's get into who they could potentially draft at the 11th spot. And then I think you've made your stance pretty clear. On camera, you've said Wiseman, and if we were to move up, that'd be the guy. But you're also pretty high on Denny. Were the Spurs to move up, because he's not going to be available at 11. What makes you want Denny so bad? I mean, I like him. I like him. He's not my first choice, but why do you like Denny?
I like Denny because he's kind of like Luka Samanic. Like they seem, but he's like 5 years beyond Luka in terms of development. I think he's one of the most
stylistically, he's like what Luka could be.
Yeah, like that's a projection, but he's already there, and he's like 19 years old. He's I think he's the most polished player, all around in the draft, for at least for a wing. And we desperately need a wing of the future, in my opinion. I know Keldon's kind of a wing, but we need like a 6'10", a guy that can crash the boards. I'm not
like a 4-5 rather than like a 3-4 or 3-2 like Keldon is. Is that what you mean? Or like a 4, like a truer 4?
Exactly. Yeah, like a just a tall wing that's like valuable on the boards. I know Keldon plays really big, but we need we need like a taller wing
for sure.
That's younger. And from what I've seen, Denny is by far our best choice there because he's just his ability to pass the ball is like ridiculous for his age. He's got that Spurs Manu Ginobili IQ, and I don't know. I just feel like. And he also has the ability to make threes and just create. So like I said, he's just very polished. And you said if we keep Lamarcus, we won't have to go through the growing pains of these young guys, and we can just keep afloat and keep working towards getting the 8th seed and trying to win a playoff series. But I think if you just try to go young, try to get someone like Denny who can be a star in the future. I mean, there's a reason he's top 4 in every mock draft. So yeah, I would love Denny. Also love James Wiseman, and I'm actually intrigued by the USC center as well. I don't know if I want a center in this draft because I kind of like Jakob. I'd rather kind of re-sign Jakob and try to build with him. But that USC center is intriguing to me. So yeah, I like
a Kongwu or whatever his name is.
Yeah, a Kongwu. But I do want to move up and get a wing. I mean, we need like that. I mean, in today's NBA, it's all about the wings, and Denny is kind of like, in my opinion, next in line, at least in this class, to be the best wing in this class. So I'm all in on Denny if we can get him.
Yeah, I love Denny's size. I love what he could add to the team, especially. I think this team has a lot of really good players, but there's no, Tim Duncan. There's no Kawhi on this team. I hate to say that, but we have some really, and I hope they prove me wrong. I hope Derek or Lonnie pans out to be that way. But I could see him fitting in the style of play that the Spurs will need to adopt to contend with this group. See him move the ball a lot. I can see him fill a void on the team. I would love to move up for Denny. That would be awesome. My take was actually when Demar didn't opt in, before he had opted in and before he had written the lovely message that I loved, telling San Antonio fans he was ready to run it back for another one and build on what we did in the bubble. Before all that, when all the Spurs are busy, trade rumors were coming through, and I thought those two were gone, him and Lamarcus. I really was thinking Obi Toppin if we're going to move up, which it sounded like we were going to. And the reason I wanted Obi is because he's Mr. Offense for this draft. He's all of his eggs are on one basket, and he has quite a few eggs, and they're all on the offensive side. And I think around the young core, if we were to ditch Lamarcus and Demar, offense would have been needed. We got two-way DeJounte. He's obviously way better on defense than offense. Growing on offense, but better on defense. Derek would have been a great compliment to Derek running pick and roll. I think he would have filled that offensive void that Lamarcus and Demar would have left. And I think he's kind of along the same age group as the rest of our young guys, 22, kind of in the middle, with DeJounte and Derek being the older of the young, if you will, and Lonnie and Keldon being the younger of the young. He kind of fits right in the middle there. So they're all kind of on a similar career path. And That means he comes out a little bit more ready, a little bit more developed. Obviously, he has more of a man's body than a boy's body for what you would see in a draft. I think he would have complemented the team well. And I think trading Demar is still on the table, trading Lamarcus is still on the table, moving up in the draft, obviously still on the table. We're making this video. I think Denny would be a great option to fill those voids. I mean, I'm sorry, Obi would be a great option to fill that offensive void. As far as Wiseman, I would love to see it. I would love the Spurs to take the chance on that first pick. They say it's taking a chance because he's kind of a dying, that style of play is somewhat of a dying breed in the NBA, but you still got Embiid, you still got Davis. I don't know if he's exactly those mold, but he's in that kind of mold, maybe more immobile, kind of like a Whiteside kind of guy. Depends on how he gets molded, but I'd still rather keep Lamarcus. Anyway, wrapping up, Matt, do you honestly think that we'll see a move from the Spurs tomorrow? I feel like the trades would happen tomorrow if they're going to happen. I don't think we're going to draft a guy and trade him a couple days later. Though the COVID fast forward situation, maybe we will, but I just don't think that would happen. I think once the draft's over, the Spurs are locked into that to that player, and there's not going to be post-draft post-draft movement. So do you think a move gets made tomorrow, Matt?
I'm going to lean yes, just based on the smoke. I mean, we've already seen like a couple verified sources saying the Spurs are looking to, move up in the draft, possibly send the veterans elsewhere. And then Waj came out today, the day before the draft, and said, expect to see a lot of movement tomorrow. A lot of teams looking to, move veterans around to get up into the lottery and move up to higher draft picks. So I think we definitely qualify as one of those teams. I think Pop sees the writing on the wall. I mean, even with peak Lamarcus and Demar, this team isn't going to go where we wish it would go. And I think that with the young Hall, we can still, like you said, that playoff experience is so valuable. I still think we move up, get an Obi Toppin, someone like that. I think we can still challenge for the A seed right away if we keep that bubble Spurs, that way of basketball going. So, yeah, I think we'll make a move. I'm optimistic.
Okay. Yeah, bubble Spurs plus a top 10, top 5 pick. There's an outside chance they could make that 8th seed or maybe get into. There's a play-in tournament now. I think 7 through 10 all have a chance to get in. So I could definitely see a shot of making that. I don't think we'll make a move tomorrow. I want to believe that some people in the Spurs staff are thinking the way I'm thinking. I know I'm in the minority when it comes to Spurs Twitter, Spurs Nation. I know the fans want to see a trade, and I understand that. I understand it sucks to not be what we're used to being, but that's really rare and really hard to do. And yes, it's done through the draft, but we've been building through the draft. And I think the pieces that we have give the young guys the best opportunity to maximize themselves if the new play style is adopted, if the share the ball play style is adopted, if the young guys can get heavily involved with the offense and Lamarcus can take a back seat. DeMar can be the closer, but maybe throughout the game he doesn't touch the ball as much. That all has to happen. And I think it can. Either way, I support the Spurs. I believe in the Spurs. I believe in the front office. A lot of things fans don't agree with happened because of the Kawhi situation just blowing up all over the Spurs faces. So it'll be interesting to watch tomorrow. Definitely one of the most anticipated drafts I've ever experienced in my lifetime because all I've ever known is Tim Duncan Spurs. So it should be a fun one tomorrow, and we'll talk to y'all after the draft.